Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Good day, and welcome to our podcast. This is CampHacker, episode 68, recorded on the 9th of April, 2014. Today's topic is preparing your senior summer camp staff. If you would like easy, automatic, free updates of our podcast, you can subscribe in iTunes or the free Stitcher app. This week's CampHacker podcast is sponsored in part by camp pros like you who support our show on Patreon. If you've got even one good idea from the CampHacker podcast, you can show your support for as little as $1 per episode. We've got some great rewards too. It's just like a Kickstarter campaign. Please go to patreon.com/camphacker. And by the Camp Owners and Directors Association. You provide quality camp experiences for children, helping them grow and gain independence. We help you achieve your vision. Check us out at campownersanddirectors.com. We hope you enjoy the CampHacker Show. Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to the CampHacker Podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I run a blog about running a great summer camp at camphacker.tv.
And my name is Gabrielle, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentians in Quebec, and I'm speaking with you from Montreal.
My name is Joe Richards. I'm the Executive Director at Pierce Williams Christian Centre, a United Church of Canada summer camp and retreat facility located in Fingal, Ontario, which is sort of halfway between Detroit and Toronto.
And I'm Paul Sheridan, and I'm the director of Four Winds Westward Ho. We're a traditional co-ed residential camp on Orcas Island in Washington State.
Paul, welcome back. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's awesome. And Paul, you've spent a lot of the year on the road, and so it's the first chance we've had to get you on. It's great.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to only be traveling a little bit.
Sounds like you had the trip of a lifetime in the fall.
Yeah, we did. My wife and I spent 2 months in Southern Africa and traveled around, and we volunteered for 12 days at Phil Lilienthal's camp outside Johannesburg. Yeah. It was a trip of a lifetime. I don't think I could do it every single year and also run a summer camp, but I'm really happy to have had the opportunity. It was pretty amazing.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm excited to have everybody back here. There's a couple things that I wanted to go to just before we jump into our topic. I'm so grateful to some people who have left reviews on iTunes. I was talking to David Gill, who is a former co-host and someone we hope to have back on again. And I noticed, Joe, that you left a review. So I thank you very much for that.
I did.
That's very helpful to us. And so if you feel like you've got anything from our co-host, learned anything, if you go to camphacker.tv/iTunes, you can leave us a rating and review there. And it does really help us show up in search. So we'd be grateful if you could take the time to do that. I'm going to come back around to something we mentioned in the last podcast, which is Think Camp. And it's a passion project of Joe's that Gab and I have been involved in some small way in the past. So, Joe, I'll give you a chance to talk about that later, but I do want to dive right into our topic today. We're recording this at the beginning of April, and people I know just from watching the Camp Pros Facebook group and some of the stuff on Twitter, people are getting really focused on summer now. And so I wanted to address head on some of these things that are important to being great camp directors during the summer. So today we're going to talk about how you prepare your summer leadership staff, your senior staff that are summer only, how you prepare them for their job, because it's much different than being a counselor. Although for some camps, I acknowledge that some people will do both, counsel and do some of these program or leadership roles at the same time. It's mixed it all in with it. But I wanted us to really talk about how we can get that group of people prepared, confident, ready to go for what will be a big summer in 2014. So, Joe, I wanted to start with you. you have you've a great bunch of people and a lot of returning staff. What do you do to prepare people for a new role, a little bit more responsibility, and an understanding of what it's going to be like this summer?
I think this is a topic that I've thought about quite a bit. And it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you set them up for success. And so when you have people who are new to that specific role, you hope that they've gained the experience that they need to learn most of those tasks beforehand. For us, it comes down to clear expectations, because preparing staff is getting them ready to know what we're going to expect of them. And part of that is through the mentoring programs and having other staff talk to them and whatnot. But it's a lot of it is talking with those staff and having those staff talk with other staff members who've done the job. We have the final report system, which is something I implemented from when I was at the Taylor Staton camp. So you could go back, you can go back here and you can read the final reports for any leadership team position all the way back to the summer of 2006, right? So you can, and some are better than others. So it's not like I let them read all of them. We pick and choose which ones we like the most. And the final report is really something where at the end of the summer, the leadership team member will write up their experience, their successes, their challenges, their failures, things they would do differently. And then they write a letter to the next person to do the job, which they might know or they might not know. And that final report can go a long way towards being sort of a how-to manual. And when you add 2 or 3 of them together, it becomes almost like a tips and tricks manual of, oh, this is what we can do. And so it's really preparing staff that way. There's another thought that I had, and I forget what culture it was, and I forget what podcast I was listening to that had on it, but it was this concept that if you can't do the job, if you need to be trained specifically on how to do the job, then why are you doing the job? Meaning that in our culture, sometimes we move people to certain positions without them having experience to fill those positions. Whereas in different cultures, the only way that you're going to become someone who's in charge of a particular program or in charge of a particular job is that you've had the training to lead up to that year after year after year. So it's not something where you can bring someone new in, but it's something where through all of their experiences at camp, they can then take that on because they know the basis and they know and they have very few things that they have to learn specifically that they don't know how to do. Right. And at camp, it's one of those, at Pierce Williams, it's one of those things where we really hope that our staff, we have here, as you had said, Travis, we are one of those camps that have very few divisions and very few jobs. And so if you're a counselor here, you could also be a programmer. That's just the way it works. And depending on the week to week what we need, the leadership team is the only step above that. And the leadership team really are the positions that will supervise other staff and will take care of those, the specifically program director and a CIT coordinator and our Rainbow program coordinator and our camper counselor care coordinator, a lot of coordinators, and our wilderness coordinator. We coordinate a lot at camp. And so those positions will really only hire internal. In my time here, let's say since the summer of 2006, I don't think I've hired externally for any of those positions because you want a consistency factor as you move forward. And we're lucky enough to have the staff to provide that consistency. So preparing those people now is talking, communicating with them, but they, and making sure they have clear expectations as well. So I think that's the majority of what we do.
Right. And I want to pick up on one of the things that you said, which is about not moving someone into the position. I'm not sure exactly how you worded it, but what I took from it is not moving someone into the position because it's because they need to move up instead of. So the best counselor in the world may not be a great arts and crafts director, or may not move into a supervisory position very well. They may be because they're a great counselor. Instead, you want someone who's got training and experience in being a supervisor to become the supervisor. And I suppose what you're saying, Joe, is that you train those people along the way so that they can naturally move up, but you're not assuming that just because you counseled 2 years, you automatically become into a senior position.
That's correct. And our pay scale, this is one of the years ago I learned from someone that our pay scale isn't set up to reward you being in a higher position. Our pay scale is set up to reward you returning to camp.
Right.
So you can be a fourth year counselor and make the same as someone who is a fourth year staff member yet on the leadership team. And people might say, well, but don't they have more responsibility? Well, sure they do, but they all accept this. It's not like for us, it's not a hidden thing. We don't hide what we pay people. We have a scale that is very matchable. And we actually, Jessica, my summer camp director, and I went through this conversation and with a staff member this year, someone who the question was, okay, well, do we bring them back to be a counselor? Or is there another role they can play, or where are they? It becomes in the puzzle piece, right? Where are they the best fit? And if they want to be a fifth year counselor, but they're the most amazing counselor with their kids, then so be it. That's awesome.
Right on. Cool. So, Paul, for you at Four Winds, getting them ready at this time of the year, what does it look like there?
Well, I would say most of our work is done either before or after this time of year.
Right.
In terms of what happens on April 9th, not much. There is a little bit that we do at this time of year. A couple of weeks ago, so our leadership team, what we call them, is the heads team. There's 12 of them, and as a group, they have a massive amount of influence on what the summer looks like. But individually, they have very, very different jobs. There's two of them, which we call the head of boys and head of girls, which is sort of a head counselor type position. And they have a job that is unlike any other summer staff member for us. I mean, they're what they do is closer to what my assistant director and I do than it is to what an average summer staff member does. And they're just a very key part. That group of four, we meet every day. There's a lot of trust there. We're the folks that are hashing stuff out behind the scenes in order to make the best choices in the broader camp community. And so there's a lot of culture shock for them. They don't, what they've seen growing up as campers and counselors, the exterior of what the head of boys and girls are to camp is not the truth of their daily life.
Yes.
in any sort of way. And so one thing we do with those two is we have a little retreat in the spring, and we fly them to camp from wherever they are. We have flown folks from England to the west coast of the U.S., for that 3-day retreat. Yep. We're willing to make that investment to spend 3 days with the four of us in the spring before things get crazy, and start building those expectations and building the relationship as well, because a lot of the things that the four of us talk about can't be talked about in the broader community. There's a lot of things that we need to be able to hash out behind closed doors, and so that means that those two summer staff that are used to being able to rely on other summer staff for their emotional support can no longer rely on summer staff for a lot of their emotional support. They need to rely on myself and our assistant director for a lot of things. There are things that they can rely on other summer staff for. So we do that, is one thing that we do this time of year. And the other thing we do is just communicate with them. There's a lot of little, honestly, mostly relationship building emails that go out, but also expectation stuff, stuff about we're not shy. We make a lot of calls about social networking mistakes in summer staff, and we make them more quickly when it's ahead. And so we make a lot of those calls, and those are not. It's funny. I think I talk to camps that don't make those calls, and I think they're sort of terrified of picking a fight with their summer staff. But we've actually managed to set it up so those calls are honestly end up being relationship building calls, not relationship damaging calls.
Yeah.
They're not, somebody makes a relatively minor mistake on Facebook. That person isn't, the job offer isn't pulled. It's an opportunity to connect with them and say, hey, this is what we were talking about when we talked about this back last year, or when you signed your paperwork. And normally the summer staff are really responsive to it, and that ends up being a real positive thing. So those are the things that we do this time of year, but most of the work is done the previous summer, the interview, and then in heads training in a couple of months is where the real bulk of the work is done.
When's heads training?
For us, they arrive, returning counselors arrive on June 12th, and the heads arrive on June 8th. So We've got 4 days with them before the counselors arrive.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Gab, what's it like for you?
I think we're all sort of in a similar tone. I mean, you hire the right people. You hope that they're, that you've set them up right. Hopefully they're from your organization. Sometimes you do have to go on the outside, but you put in procedures throughout your camp so that mentorship happens, and they learn a little bit how to supervise staff in their current jobs, either by supervising CITs or, assisting newer staff that come to camp. I think basically I'm so grateful for having Skype. I think it's just made such a difference. Before things really, I remember actually writing letters to leadership team members and them writing back and doing a pen pal system thing and phone calls. And now we set up regular Skype sessions, and depending if they're a returning leadership team member or a new leadership team member, those Skypes are a little bit different. But returning ones usually work on a project for camp that they're passionate about. It could be behind the scenes, or it could be something that everybody, a new program that people will partake in. And new leadership team members really focus on understanding what they're looking for in their staff, how to train their staff, to start really thinking as a coach, if you will. So really use Skype in those instances. And then we also really, really want to make sure that this particular group gets educated from people that are other than our organization. So either we bring them to conferences or we bring people in. I find that very, very important. And usually, for the most part, not planned, but for the most part, at conferences or the people that we bring in mirror a lot what I say. Right. And that just reinforces it. And so having outside education to spark those, those thoughts, I think, and actions are very, very useful.
Right. And that's an interesting thing too. And it's not very timely for this point, but something we should come back to in the fall is I think it'd be good to go back to discussing camp conferences again, and how you set expectations with your staff at camp conferences. And when you go, I think when you're younger and you go to your first camp conference, you tend to seek out the people that you know, and you end up with clumps of your staff in the same sessions, and you have to say to them, spread out, go. We need as much word as possible. We need you to be able to teach this to us and get that. So remind me at some point, we'll come back to how to get the most out of camp conferences again, because I think that's an awesome idea.
Totally. And I think also for people that hear, I send my staff off to conferences or we hire people to come in. And for a camp that's on a tight budget, what I've done in the past is go and speak for a camp and ask what that camp director wants me to talk about, and I do a session with them, and then they come to my camp and we do the same thing, or we merge our leadership team members together and do something together. So, there's ways of doing that at a low cost where you don't need to. It's nice when everybody can go to a conference, but sometimes time and financial, there's restrictions to that. But there's other ways to get that outside influence.
Right. I want to come back to something, and I'm sorry, Gab, I'm just going to jump back to Paul because it's something that he said that I'm still surfacing in my brain here. You're talking about your calls about social media gaffes Paul. At what point in the year is that for people that are that have signed a contract already, or is that for some of your last year's alumni who may or may not be coming back as well?
We'll make a call at any time, honestly, if we think the person might be coming back.
Yeah.
And if the person's not coming back, we sort of recognize that, and it's a little bit of a bummer because even if they're not coming back, they are still an influence on our campers, and so we'll make the call. And so, if it's egregious, we might make the call even if we know for a fact they're not coming back, and just say, hey, we have no leverage over you. We get that, but we're going to ask you to take this down because, and just make the case that you have an influence on our campers. And and they know that if they say no, they're kind of, if they refuse, that they're out. They're burning the bridge a little bit, and they're potentially, damaging a reference that they might have, and things like that. So we'll make the call anytime. I think, if it's times we have made the call when we think someone's coming back, but they haven't actually signed a contract yet, where it depends on what the actual post is. Mm-hmm. We've pulled out hey, if you're not coming back, this isn't our business. If it's not too egregious, we sort of make a judgment call, but we don't tie ourselves to people that have signed contracts for the coming summer at all.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that. Sorry for the listeners, it's a bit of a detour, but I thought it was a really interesting point. I know that we have called in my last years directing is when, just because of who I am, I was always the first one on all social media for all of our staff. So I was one of the first person they'd see, so they would add me. But I know that I made a call to an alumni who was 3 years gone, who is obviously just partying his face off with the camp shirt on the internet, and we ask them to take it down. And I think you're right that you can play the this is going to damage the reputation of camp, but also your relationship with us in the future. That's interesting.
We've also pulled out the when it's camp people that are together in a photo or in a post, then we can pull out that you're damaging John's ability to be a leader this summer, even though you're not going to be here. So we pulled that out too. And honestly, because I was afraid too when we first started making these phone calls, that we're just picking fights all winter long with our summer staff, and it's gonna damage the culture. It's gonna damage our relationship with them. And we make, I would guess, on average, a couple calls a month to folks about stuff, and they're almost always positive. And if they're not positive, then they lead us in the right direction on another front, honestly. So it's been a good thing for us.
How big is your staff, Paul?
90.
So thank you for helping me through that, Paul. That's awesome. I want to go to Joe. So something Paul said and Gab said, or I know from talking to Gab outside of this, is about a pre-training for those senior kind of people, the leadership team in Gab's case and the head staff in Paul's. For you, Joe, do you bring in any of those senior people early to get them up to speed?
Yeah, the majority of our leadership team actually starts working with us beginning of May. So they're employed for 2 months before the summer staff get here. Mm-hmm. And so we have maintenance that has to be done, and we have school programming that is done. But in the other times, we do a lot of, night trainings and talking and communicating with them during those times. So it's not a dedicated, they're here and they're learning the things they need to learn. But we don't need to fly them in because they're already employed here, right? So they are living on site and they're working on site. And so we have them for about 3 weeks before we see our staff for a staff training weekend, because most of our staff are local. So we actually do a weekend in May where we see our staff members. And then we go forward from there. In June is a lot of school groups. And at the end of June is when the rest of our staff arrive as well.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of stuff do you cover in those little times that you can find in the spring?
It's a lot about how to supervise. It's a lot of questions that they have, right? So if they're they're reading. They've already read through some of the final reports and whatnot. And a lot of the stuff we cover is, okay, well, this is our policy on this. For example, stuff that summer staff wouldn't have to do. So driving camp vehicles, or how to deal with feedback, and how we deal with firing staff, and how we mentor staff, and how we supervise and write evaluations. All of those are things that are gone over and signed off on.
Right. No. So, Gab, what all do you do in your time period right before the counselors arrive with them?
So our staff, our leadership team, they're together for approximately 10 days. And within that 10 days, we host our open house. It's in their contract that they need to be there for our camp open house. And it's a very good way of them getting to meet the families that will be coming that summer, or perhaps next summer. And it gets them into that mindset that, camp is actually happening. And I think that sometimes, we all come from different paces in our lives. Some were traveling, some, were, at home hanging out for a while. Some had spring courses. So everybody's mindset's a little bit different. You sort of want to get them all in the same mindset, and a little bit of time spent together is very helpful, but some form of work, as Joe said, manual labor, something that sort of gets them committed to doing something for camp that physically that you can see is, I think, very, very important. And we address the policies and procedures of their jobs, basically, as well as get them to get to know each other. So, what do I need when I'm struggling from you guys? What can I do to help you when you're struggling? How do we deal with, X situations as a team? How do we keep a similar front, So it's really about, I think, coming together, building a strong team, having a focus, and making sure that they clearly understand their job, and that they're building their relationship with you. Because if they're coming into this position, it's a different relationship. And this is where I try to be, I'm pretty transparent with my staff, but with my leadership team, I'm even more transparent about my own difficulties and what I struggle with sometimes, so that they know, because we work together so often. So, those type of things. But basically, really building the team and understanding what their job is about is key.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything that you do differently for Winspol in your training time with the heads?
No, it's similar stuff. I mean, it's about. There's a portion of the time that's dedicated to the nitty gritty of whatever their job is, the some crafts or the CT program or whatever it is, and then there's a bigger portion, probably a more important portion, that's dedicated to team building, setting the tone, and I think on all the things that Gab talked about, I think the only thing that I would just add on to it is that I think it's a phenomenon in summer camp that summer staff just don't understand how they're influenced. That when summer staff screw up, it's not because they disagree with the rule, or it's not because they, in most cases, of course, sometimes they might disagree with the rule, but I think in most cases, if they're, for example, if you have, we have a rule that says you can't, as a staff member, you have to keep your cell phone in the staff lounge or in your vehicle, and you can use it in the staff lounge, or you can use it off the property in your time off. And if a staff member decides to carry their cell phone around in their backpack instead, whether it's a counselor or whether it's a head, it's not because they think that cell phones should be allowed everywhere in camp. It's just because they think, what, it's not going to be a big deal. No one's going to know. I'm not going to damage camp by doing this. And I think that people just don't feel that important. Like people don't feel like that other people are going to follow what they do. And of course, camp directors know that kids absolutely follow what campers do, or what counselors do, and that counselors absolutely follow what heads or
older counselors do. Yeah.
And like that's absolutely what makes camp go. And so trying to, we found, and I think every camp's a little different depending on the numbers and the structure, but with us, the way we're set up, we found that we can do amazing things with our culture if our heads team is on board. and truly on board. But in order to get there, the heads team needs to understand how powerful they are in terms of setting that tone and how much people will follow their lead. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make that point and to carry that over from because we usually have some returning heads that can help us to bring the new heads into that idea, because we try to get that idea across to all 90 of our staff, but 12 is a more manageable number, and if we can make the point with that 12, then we can get a really long way.
Yeah.
And I like what Joe was saying, that it's not you don't necessarily earn a larger salary by the position that you have at camp. So you could be a camp counselor for 5 years if that's something that you're stellar at and that you really excel and enjoy. I think, though, as the director, the responsibility is to really be clear with the staff that return year after year and say, as a 17-year-old, this is what I expect from you. As a 19-year-old, maybe in the same position, doesn't matter, but these are my expectations. And that's something that I do with my staff when they come back, that, this is what I expect from you. This is unacceptable. I don't mind a 17-year-old forgetting her hat, bringing her kids up, having to go back. These are things that, this is part of the, I'm learning on the job at 17. At 18, 19, that's not acceptable anymore. That you have to be able to have, locked down, basically. And I think if you do that with your staff, by the time they become leadership team members, they really understand that, the impact that they have, that their role is something that is of role modeling to the other staff members. And hopefully even an 18-year-old understands the difference between what it was like for them when they were 17 versus what it's like for them now. If you set that into your system, this is what I expect from you. So mistakes are very cool because you're learning something new. But also the bar goes up every single year that you come back, and it's for their own growth too. You don't want people to stay stagnant. Stagnant staff don't do well. They just don't. They have to keep growing as individuals.
In part, to add on to that, Gab, is this idea that pay structure. Twingo years ago, I talked to Jane McCutcheon, and right, their philosophy was, you need to come back before I tell you what you're going to do. Right. So are you willing to come back to camp and then let me choose what position to put you in? Right. And salary works much the same way. And as they get older, you do have debates about their worth, right? Because with a 5th or a 6-year salary, I could fund almost 2 first-year salaries, right? So it becomes this, are you worth, it's like a sports team analogy, right? There's a salary cap. Are you worth 2 of these people? And those are debates that you can have, and your previous experience is going to weigh heavy on that.
And I think that with if we're going with the sports analogy, my brother's really into sports, so I know way more than I care to know about sports, actually. I'm like, how do I know this? But I do. I think that as, coaches know how far they can push their players, and they know what their players are capable of. And I think that's the key of a good director. You know what that person can be, but you have to help them. And you can't overwhelm them and put too much on their plate, but you can sort of guide them in that direction. And then, of course, it's up to them to, take those steps. But that what Twingo does is something that's very cool in the sense of that they're also showing quite a bit of trust in the organization itself.
Right. So I'll let you all think and see if there's any other thoughts you want to add. I'm going to add one more thing, that thinking about this question of how we get senior staff ready. If you've listened to the show for any time, you know that I always have more ideas than time. One of the things that I've always wanted to figure out a way to do, and I just don't know the mechanics of it, and I don't know that it would be easy to do, but I would love to figure out a way to have like an association of program directors or an association of former leadership directors that you could have, pick the brains either within your organization or hopefully without all of the people that have been a program director at a camp belong to this association, and they have some sort of meeting hosted online, something, I don't know what it is, but that new program directors can say, I'm terrified of this. How do I plan for doing something with 400 people? How do I pull that off successfully? Or I have this little twinkle of an idea, and how, can you give me some ideas of how to get that going? I always thought something like that would be interesting, certainly within a camp, to get all of the former LAT directors together and have them be available to this year's LAT director. And formally, informally, I don't know what it is, but it's one of those ideas that I thought would be an awesome way to prepare these kind of people for this role, is to have not just the words of them, like the reports. I know lots of camps do reports like Joe's talked about, and I think they're a huge resource, but have their brains available to you as well as in your role. It'll be fun. So, Joe, do you have any other final thoughts on preparing them or getting them ready?
I think a lot of my thoughts lie on the expectations. And this is where, I have never, it's funny listening to Paul talk. I've never called anyone on social media. And it's the clear expectations. And when you build something unique about our culture, or maybe not unique, is this idea that a lot of it is self-policed, right? They know what we expect, and they know what to live up to. And for us, to most of our staff, the worst possible thing that could happen to them is that we are disappointed in them, and that they've let us down. And when you do that, anybody who applies for those jobs is going to know that I have the skills to take this on, and I'm willing to take those risks. But we just really want to be as unapproachable as I am to my junior staff members. I think when they become leadership team members, they see that it's not me being unapproachable. It's that they just never thought to approach me, right? So, and that is one of the tricks to training them as well, is teaching them that they can ask for help at any time without any repercussion. Because if you don't ask, we'll never be able to share our experience with you.
Well, and I agree with that, Joe. I wonder, though, if you have a unique advantage, and I don't think you're saying that the culture of Four Winds is better or worse than the one at Pierce Williams, but you have a unique advantage in that you're very geographically close and in a small team, so it's easier to keep track of these kind of things without, or I don't know, just self-police, as you say, than Four Winds staff.
Well, and it's one of those things, Travis, where we actually think about the fact that if camp grows, because the stuff we're doing is going to make camp grow, and what is our sort of, there's a number of beds on any facility site that would sort of dictate this is your maximum number of campers. And so for us, if we were running full beds and full systems, which is not always our goal, and that's a secondary monetary thing because we're a charity. If we were to run, we could see 180 kids per session, which would then mean my staff team would probably grow to 60 to 65 people, if not a bit more. And so how does your culture change with that growth is the other issue, right? And I agree, having the majority of our staff be local, by that I mean within an hour's drive of camp, is very helpful. And because it's so small, 35 or fewer, they're all friends with each other on social media, and they all know our expectations. It's funny, I have a fourth-year staff member who I just took to Buckeye Leadership Workshop for the second time, and she just sent me a friend request today on Facebook, because I don't pay attention to who my friends are on Facebook, but it's one of those things where I'll let them come to me. I know that enough of our other staff are friends with her that I'll know about anything or not me personally, but potentially it would get up to Jessica that she would know, and then I'll know, and we deal with those issues as they arise. But I think there are unique advantages to our setup, which is very local, very close and small.
Right. Right. Paul, any final wisdom to pass on?
No, I mean, I think we've covered it. In most of the conversations, the only thing I would say is that for those folks listening who might have said something in Camp Pros and said this is the time when I can set the tone with my leadership team, I think that one of the takeaways here is that a lot of that work should be done in the previous summer. So the bad news is you might have missed last summer, but the good news is next summer is coming up right now.
Right.
And cultivating your team, making sure you've got enough candidates, for all the leadership jobs that you've got, making sure that you're avoiding the phenomenon of people just moving up just to move up.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're growing your own and setting the tone early. I think that's definitely the biggest thing that we do. And then the hiring process, we say no to people, which is sometimes painful, but important. And then the training prior to camp is sort of your last real opportunity to set the tone,
to influence that.
But it's a good one because you've got them there on your property, so that's more than we get in the winter usually.
Right. And I wonder if it's an important realization at when we're recording this at the beginning of April, that in fact you are solidifying the tone for 2014 this coming summer, but now is when you set the tone for 2015. Because now is when you start to build your team for next year, and build their expectations and start to open their minds to the possibilities of the job and all of the responsibilities that come with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gab, any final thoughts?
No, I think that Travis, what you said is basically, I think is key, is to understand that what you're doing this summer is going to trickle to your next summers. And if you're discouraged by certain staff behavior that seems to happen year after year, that it's within your power to change it, but it might not be right now. But what are some of the things you can do right now so it starts to eliminate it? I think an example I could use is basically there was a camp that had that was really noticed that they didn't have lifeguards, and they kept hiring from the outside, but they weren't the right people for their organization. And so they put in, first year they put in a swimming program for kids. And then I think on their second year, they made it mandatory unless you had a certain level. And it was basically a 7-year plan. And in their CIT program, you had to have your bronze med. But those kids had been doing their swimming classes, and this was something that now all of these staff members have their lifeguard. They pay for their life, and it's not a problem anymore. So I think it's sort of, you can do that similarly with behavior. And I think the reason why I'm saying that is a little bit about what Paul was saying, a little bit afraid to talk to your staff, a little bit of fear. When you feel that fear, when you feel anxious, when you want to avoid, that's the place you need to be looking. And that's something you can do with your leadership team right now. What are certain things that we could do better? And sort of look at that and see if it's something that you can fix right away, or is it something that needs a little bit more of a long-term phasing in?
Right. Thanks for that. And I should say that if this topic is something that tweaks your interest, you should check out Gab's other podcast on the network, Camp Code, because they did some real specific work in that show about getting people ready for the summer and teaching people how to teach. So not just here's your role, but here's how you make your role into teaching others. And so if you go to camphacker.tv/campcode, you will find the podcast there. And I believe it was episode 5 that was teaching others to teach, if it's not at 6. And check out that episode. You can download all of those shows for free. Camp Code is focused solely on staff training. So there's some awesome stuff from Gab and Ruby and Beth on that show. So I hope you'll check that out as well. Well, thanks for a great discussion. I want to just take us into a little short ad, if you will, for a program called Think Camp. Think Camp is running at Pierce Williams on the 11th to the 13th of November 2014, and is looking to return to being an annual event. Think Camp really is an unconference that focuses solely on the most productive moments of camp conferences, those awesome discussions of, oh, really, you do this, we do this, and share some of those awesome stuff. And by unconference, it means that everybody needs to come prepared to be a part of the discussion. It's not passive in any way. And so if you go to that, we'll be looking for people to come from Canada and the United States to come to Pierce Williams for 3 days in November. Registration is limited to 50 people, so that we hope that you'll get on that registration right away. It's at thinkcamp.ca, and registration is now open. Joe and Gab, I know you were both at the inaugural Think Camp a few years ago. I was sick and unable to make it, but Gab, what was your one highlight from Think Camp?
I love the energy, and because everybody has something to contribute and comes with something to contribute, you really are learning a lot. And I feel out of almost all of the conference formats or unconference formats that I get the most out of this one. Absolutely. Information is very high.
Right. And I love that the concept that everybody's expected. Participation means that you're expected to come and present. And I'll let Joe talk about the different lengths of sessions in just a second. But I love that there are short little sessions that you can just put out. I have this little beginning idea. This is something that I've been thinking about, and I'd like to put it out there and host a discussion. You don't have to say, here's my idea, it's complete, here are all my slides, it's all ready to go. It's just an opportunity to say, have you ever thought about this, and bring people together in a room to talk about that. Joe, what's your favorite moment from Think Camp that ran before?
My favorite moment is actually all of the moments since then. Because it's one of those things when you go to a conference now, there's this group of 22 people who are at the initial Think Camp, which was held in the fall of 2007. And all of those 22 people, if you talk to them, you know who they are, and they'll say, when is the next Think Camp happening? Like, it's because literally they're like, that is the most I still think about all of those sessions are some of the feedback. On the thinkcamp.ca website, I actually put an email out to people to say, what is your testimonial in one sentence? And my favorite was from Vanessa Marcotte, who is at Summit Camp out in BC now. But she said one sentence, and then she goes on for like 3 paragraphs. And so it was this feedback that Think Camp, for me, it's about this culture of people that can share, and that literally we did. The initial Think Camp was one day. Like, we arrived, I think, Friday afternoon and left Saturday afternoon. And in that time period, we saw 19 different presentations. And your mind was just overflowing with information, but you could get in touch with all of these people. And that's really the value, is that there are still people I talk to this day. So
good on. So if you're looking for an intense 2-day conference in which you help set the agenda, go to thinkcamp.ca and register there. Which then means it's natural for us to move on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
Thank you to my 3 co-hosts for bringing their tools. The tools are something that helps make them a better camp director. Paul, we haven't had you on a long time. I look forward to hearing what your tool is today.
So my tool is Abuse Prevention Systems. Abuse Prevention Systems is a company that's run by 2 lawyers that specialize in sexual abuse litigation. They come in after the fact of a terrible a terrible situation in a camp, but they have this sort of side business of training camps to, or training actually not just camps, all sorts of youth-focused organizations to prevent sexual abuse within their organizations. They have a number of different products. They have policies and forms and different types of trainings. They'll come to your property, I think, as well if you want to have an in-person training. What we use is an online training that we require of all of our summer staff. And it's required of them every other year. So if they come for multiple years, they have to take it every other year. And it's a couple of hours, and we'll be sending them out the announcement to do it in the next couple of weeks. We do it this time of year. And I'm actually generally not a huge fan of online trainings, pre-camp online trainings. They don't work super well for a lot of things within Four Winds, but for this topic in particular, it's a great fit. And the reason is first of all, the topic is obviously heavy. It's nothing that anyone's excited to talk about. But these guys are experts, and they lay it out in a very detailed way, and they don't pull punches. And so they really put it out there in a way that I think a lot of camp directors would have a hard time doing in an in-person training pre-camp. That allows you to follow up on their training once you do have your staff on your property, and that's a huge opportunity. But the other benefit, which is not something we actually advertise to our summer staff, but I will to other camp directors, there is a reality that a poorly run summer camp is a wonderful target for a sexual predator. You have kids away from their parents. You might have, at a poorly run summer camp, you've got bad practices and poor supervision and lots of opportunities for one of these horrible folks to do a horrible thing at your camp. And by doing this training prior to camp, you're setting a tone. If you do have that person who is signed up to work for you this summer, that might just scare them away. That might send a message to that person: this isn't a poorly run summer camp. This is a summer camp that takes sexual abuse seriously. This is a camp where I'm not going to be, where I'm likely to get caught, or I'm likely to be not allowed to do the horrible sexual abuse that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's for me a huge side benefit, is that I might be scaring away the person from ever showing up on my property, and it's no fun to think about, but the numbers are really stark, and all camps need to be aware of it. And I think that camps that are on the leading edge of this kind of stuff, 10, 15 years ago, I felt like we were on the leading edge of protecting kids because we did background checks, right. And that's no longer the leading edge, and so we've looked out for other things that we can do, and this is, I think, a pretty good solution.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. It's always good to be able to help each other protect our kids. Joe, what's your tool?
My tool of the week is the Buckeye Leadership Workshop, which is an organization that I sit on the planning committee of and have for the past 6 years. It's held every spring, sort of March and April, in just north of Columbus, Ohio, at a camp called Recreation Unlimited. So it's a camping conference that's actually held at camp, and it is. We just returned from it, so I take 4 staff members with me every year. I've started taking another camp director from Canada, Bill Stevens at Camp Big Canoe, has come for the past couple of years. And what it is it's a very unique conference that has a community feel like nowhere that I've gone. And it only gets better every time you go back. So we've had in the past featured presenters like Jim Kane, or this year we had a nationally recognized storyteller in the States called Bill Lepp, who was hilarious and a funny guy, and just a fun guy to be around. Next year, we've already confirmed that Sam Sykes is going to be our Sam Sykes of Executive Marbles and and other leadership team and teamwork stuff. Fame is going to be there for the entire week. It's a week-long conference, sort of a Wednesday to a Sunday, and you're all in accommodation, food, and everything for like $300, and if you register late, for $375. So it's March 18th to the 22nd of 2015, which might conflict with Tri-State. I'm not sure what the dates are for Tri-State next year. But here's one of the best plugs, even if it does conflict with Tri-State. So there's a recreation professional who attended Tri-State and has for the past 6 years, and she came out to Buckeye this year, and she spent the time, and we were saying what the date was for next year, and she says, I'm talking to her afterwards, and she says, oh, well, I think that might conflict with Tri-State. She goes, but I'm going to have to really make a choice. And I said, but that says something. If you've gone to Tri-State for 6 years and after one time here, you have to, now it becomes you're making a choice between the two versus Tri-State is always going to win, right? So it's just a very different conference than you would than anything I've been to, and I'll keep going back for as long as I can.
Awesome, great tool, thank you. Gab, what's your tool?
My tool is the International Camping Congress that's being hosted in Turkey in October. Yeah, it's October between the 23rd and 27th. And like many international camp congresses, there's pre-tours and post-tours. Mm-hmm. The reason why I'm mentioning it is that this is something that's very, very different from most conferences because it has a complete international feel. But the other reason why I'm mentioning it is simply because it's on the Mediterranean Sea. It's gorgeous. And they've done some really great stuff with their prices. So spouses can come for half price off. If you have kids underneath the age of 12 years old, they're free. The price for a ticket to fly from either Canada or Quebec, I haven't checked other regions, but is approximately $1,000. Everything included, so food, alcohol. So it's they have a great program set up, but it's also one of those things, if you can go, or if you just thought, I've never been to one and I'm interested, or, this is something this might be a good place to start because the prices are great and it's going to be quite gorgeous. And of course, lots of networking opportunities. So my camp has really benefited from it. So that's one. However,
yes.
Last time I got cut off accidentally from sharing my tool of the week. So I'm putting in a sneak one. This is for people that live around, their camp is close to Toronto. There's a great deal. Peter Katz is putting on, I think it's 800, and I'll find exactly how much it is, 825 or 875 deal for him to play at your camp. He's trying to fundraise for his new album, and this is sort of like a Kickstarter thing. And Peter is the guy that wrote the camp song, and he played at the Quebec Camping Congress International one in 2008. But he does an amazing show. It's a good deal, and if you're about 3 hours away from Toronto, it's a fairly decent price. So I think there's about 7 left of those tickets. So if that's interesting to you, I wish I lived closer to Toronto.
What's Peter's website?
It's peterkatz.com.
Okay.
I'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah,
but,
awesome.
If you go there, he's on Facebook. It's that's some we had Peter over at our camp a couple of times, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mine, I checked just now to see if we'd picked this before, and we haven't. Mine is Vistaprint. Many of you use Vistaprint or have seen ads for Vistaprint or have seen good deals on stuff from Vistaprint. And there are other companies that make other products that Vistaprint does that do them what I consider better. But I love how incredibly fast Vistaprint is. It's cheap. And they're starting to come out with some interesting products. So once you upload your logo for something, so we had a bunch of CampHacker thank you cards done and a bunch of other things. They suggested the other things you could get. So for example, we got one CampHacker phone case and have a CampHacker shoulder bag and just all the stuff there. It's just interesting to think of Vistaprint not necessarily as your brochure printer or your business card printer, but think of it for stuff like rewarding staff, little stuff that would be inexpensive, less than $20 to have as some sort of surprise reward or thank you to staff. And they've got lots of awesome options there. So I encourage you to check that out. And check that out. So it'd be vistaprint.com, vistaprint.ca, or maybe there's likely a local Vistaprint address if you're listening from outside of North America. So please do check that out. Right on. Well, good tools, everybody. Great show. Gab, if people want to follow up with you, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can. Well, you can email me at gabz, Gabz, at waro.com. You can check out where I work at waro.com, or you can follow me on the Twitter bird at Gabrielle Rail. And Rail's 2 L's at the end.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for being on, Gab.
Yeah, no problem.
Paul, it was awesome to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
It was awesome. How can people follow up with you or get in touch if they have any questions?
They can find all about Four Winds at fourwindscamp.org, and they can find all of my social networking stuff and contact me at paulsheridan.com.
Amazing. It was awesome. And thanks. Joe, thanks for joining us again today.
Not a problem. You can find out more about me if you want to at yoyojoe.com, yoyojoe.com, and find out all about Pierce Williams at campisbetter.com. Life is good. Camp is better. And on YoYoJoe, you'll have links to my Twitter, my Facebook, my Flickr, whatever.
Nice. Thanks, Joe. Take care, everybody. It was great to have you watching. If you are watching on YouTube, we hope that you'll check out the free audio-only version of this show that you can take with you. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher. If you're a listener and want to maybe watch some of the shows, we do things like hold up products, and you can see into our offices if you watch the show there. There's an awesome little moment. If you're a listener to the show and want to check out the YouTube video, there's an awesome little moment where Paul had a halo, where the sun... It's very early where Paul is recording, and the sun creaked up behind him and gave him a great big halo behind his head. That makes it worth watching the show on YouTube for sure. So,
the only way that I'll ever have a halo.
We do appreciate people listening and watching and subscribing. That's amazing. If you learned anything from our host this week, we hope that you would go to camphacker.tv/love and you put out a tweet thanking them for being a part of the show and sharing their wisdom with the camp community. And I think that's everything. Take care, everybody. Thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.